Hey, my name's Avery, and in this video we're going to be doing two problems dealing with the disk method and the shell method. So in this first problem we're going to be using the disk method to find the volume that is created when you rotate these two lines about the x-axis. So your first step in this process is to find your limits of integration, or like where your functions touch basically. And so you're just going to set them equal to each other. Most of the time you're going to be able to make a quadratic equation like I did here. So if you say half x, which is our first function, and square root of x, which is our second function, equal each other, you can square x to get 1/4 x squared equals x, and then you would just subtract x to make the right side equal 0, which then turns into a quadratic that you can factor. So here we have x times 1/4 x minus 1 equals 0, which gives you factors of x equals 0 and x equals 4. Next, I don't know why I put washer method, I meant to put disk method. But next we're going to plug those two values into our a and b here in our disk method equation, which I know I wrote it small, but it's pi times basically your outer radius squared minus your inner radius squared times your dx. In this function, your outer equation is going to be your square root of x, and your inner is going to be your 1/2 x. And so, like I said, you're just going to take all these values we found and plug them into this equation. So here our a equals 0, our b equals 4. You have pi times square root of x squared minus 1/2 x squared dx. And then usually in this step, I would move pi to the outside of this integral, and then you can complete your squaring inside. So square root of x squared is x, and then 1/2 x squared is 1/4 x squared. And then you're going to integrate. Usually in this step, you could do it in the calculator, but we're going to do it by hand here. And so I plugged in, I was trying to write x right there. So you're going to integrate it. You know how to do integrals. Just add 1 to your power value and then divide by that number. So you've got x squared over 2 minus x cubed over 12. And then you're going to go in and do your fundamental theorem of calculus, plug in your 4, and then plug in your 0, which we know is going to be 0. But here you've got 4 squared over 2 minus 4 cubed over 12. And then here I just wrote out the fraction work, but it's just simple arithmetic. You've got 4 squared is 16 over 2 minus 64 over 12. And then once you do all your simplifying, it's going to come out to 8 over 3. And then all you have to do is introduce that pi back in to get your final answer of 8 pi over 3 units for your volume for this question. So in this problem, we're also going to be finding the volume of a rotated solid, but this time we're going to be using the shell method. And the important thing to remember about the shell method is to pay attention which axis you're rotating from, because unlike the disk method, when you're using the shell method, sometimes you'll have to flip your equation around to match the axis you're rotating around. So like in this one, we're rotating around the x-axis, but all of our functions are in y equals. So your first step is going to be to put them in x equals. So our first function, y equals square root of x, square both sides, it turns into y squared equals x. And then same thing, you have y equals 2 minus x. That's going to turn into negative y plus 2 equals x, or 2 minus y, whatever. And then here's your shell method equation. It starts out the same, but now instead of squaring your inner radii, you have 2 pi times x or y. In this case, it's going to be y. And then you've got f of y minus g of y times your dy. And then same thing as the disk method, you're going to go through and find your limits, or where your functions intersect. Here we know we've got a y equals 0, and then you're going to find you've also got a y equals 1. So those are going to be your a and b that you plug into your integral. And you're just going to plug in all these values into your shell method equation. So you've got 2 pi, and then 0 as your a, 1 as your b, and then you've got y times 2 minus y squared times dy. And then I just go through and distribute this y to all of my terms. So then you've got 2y minus y squared minus y cubed. And then you're going to go in and integrate that. So 2y is going to turn into y squared. Y squared is going to be y cubed over 3, and y cubed is going to be y to the 4th over 4 and, keep up with your signs. Those are all subtraction signs. And then you're going to go in and do your fundamental theorem of calculus, plug in your B and plug in your A. We already know f of A is going to be 0. And then our B is 1. So our f of B is going to be 1 squared minus 1 cubed over 3 minus 1 to the 4th over 4. Same thing, it's just basic math from here on out. So 2 pi times 1 minus 1 over 3 minus 1 over 4. And then once you get all your fractions to equal out, you're going to get 2 pi times 5 over 12. Multiply would get 10 pi over 12, and then you're just going to simplify it down to equal 5 pi over 6 as your final answer.